Welcome to Dear Alice, a lifestyle approach to interior design.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dear Alice. Today we are talking about finding your niche, cultivating your own style. I keep seeing this topic pop up for people everywhere. I even listened to a couple podcasts on it in fashion to really understand what are some of the points people are making to help us cultivate our own style. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be juicy. I feel like this is a podcast that everybody just is wanting to know as they're trying to figure out who they are when they're trying to make these massive decisions for home. Whether you're a new build, whether you're a remodel, maybe you're just furnishing. Yeah. It really needs to tie back to who you are, how you use that space, what nostalgic, strings do you want to pull, depending on if you are really sentimental. We just presented to my sister who's very sentimental.
Gosh,
right?
Like all the emotional marks were there.
Yeah.
Memory points were being made in her mind already of the spaces that she's going to be having. So
yeah. And I feel like the longer you live, the more of those you have and the more you know yourself. So this exercise might be a little bit more, you might be more in tune with the decisions that you've made throughout your life and what feels most like you the older you get. I don't know. That might be something too.
Yeah, but if you are younger and you're trying to figure out your style and this niche that we're talking about, I think once you do find it, or once you find bits and pieces of it, because you're going to be collecting these throughout your whole life.
Yeah,
it should be evolving. We've said that before. It feels so good to be in a space that is 100% you.
Yeah,
or that you're getting closer with every buying decision you can afford to make. Right.
Yep.
So I'm excited for people because
this is a great topic.
Yep.
I'm super excited too. Yeah.
Okay.
So good. But first, we wanted to start out with a review from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, by the way.
And thank you for reviewing.
Yes.
That took time, and we get DMs a lot from you, and it makes doing all this worthwhile.
It refills
really
the
does.
tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we're always screenshotting and sending it to each other and being like,
That's nice.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should keep
That's
going.
a good one. Okay.
Yeah.
They love us. So this is a 5-star review from Obper, is the username. She wrote, I love learning from Jess and Suzanne. They are so fun to listen to, and I'm not even an interior designer. It's a good time. I look forward to it every week. They're high-end designers with a high-end brand with a specific style, and if that isn't your style, then find a podcast that is your style. Great advice.
So nice. Thank you, Obper.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so kind. Thank you. We're so glad that that even if you're not interior designers, that you're finding value in listening as you're trying to find who you are and where you are on this journey. So we're happy to be here too.
And even if our style is not your style, like what you see, we try and cater it. They're just principles and ideas to inspire you, whatever your style may be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really quick shout out. If you guys, since you all love design, you're listening to this podcast, you should follow along on Instagram. If you're not already, it's confusing because the podcast is called Dear Alice, but the name of our firm is Alice Lane Interior Design is the design firm side. And then the store side where we sell a lot of these things that we create and talk about is Alice Lane Home on Instagram. Alice Lane Interior Design is who we are on Instagram on just the design side where we're taking old homes and remodeling them, or we're building from the ground up homes, and you can follow in that journey. And we'll usually use the podcast topic for what to show on Instagram to help illustrate with content what the topic is about during that week. So that's a really fun thing too. So if you're not currently following along, you might enjoy that. Again, that's Alice Lane Interior Design, and the home site is Alice Lane Home. So catch us there as well.
Yes, it's very fun.
Yes. Okay, so for host chat, I wanted to talk about our first times defining ourselves by our style. How old were you when you started figuring out, with your wobbly deer legs, you're trying to figure out who you are? Yeah. I mean, we're clumsy at it, right? Mm-hmm. But how old do you guys remember when you just remember loving your outfit or feeling so you? And you got to maybe even make some of your own decisions. Maybe your parents let you choose your own school clothes that year and your mom wasn't just buying them for you. Or do you guys remember an age where you felt like this is my personal style, or it was starting to come in?
I will say that Provo Grandma, I talk about her a lot on here. That woman is thrifty and she's creative. and I grew up going to yard sales, and I grew up going to estate sales. And so there was always, I think that vintage thread that's part of my personal style was evolved from that point. But I think probably in high school is like when I started to like be like, when you have a job and you have your own money, and like, it's not your parents, like, you know, kind of dragging their feet at buying you something that you want, you know, you have to purchase it. I worked at a vintage Levi store, was my very first job. And I think the owners of that, I think for you guys, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what you say, but you kind of have these people that you look to and you're just like, Kristen and Clay DeGraff, like they were like my first style icons. Mm-hmm. He owned the vintage Levi store. She owned this rad consignment store that sold other vintage clothes. And I worked at both of them at one point, but those were part of me, like trying to figure out stuff would come through the door and I'd be like, I like those jeans. Why? Because I can like see what's vintage about it. And they taught me all these things. So I really do think it was like through that, and then the colored capri chinos at the Gap, because that was my other job too. Is just like they introduced, this sounds so funny. They introduced this like line of these chinos, and they was in like every single color. And I bought them in every single color.
As you should.
As you should.
Yeah.
And for my wedding, it was every single color. Like, don't put me in a box, you know? Mm-hmm. So it just started like, I couldn't not have them all because I loved all the colors.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say like, probably like sophomore year in high school is when I started to be like, okay, that's my jam.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wear all the colors, and so that's probably me.
So 15, 16 years old. It was 15, like when 16. You were like, I've got my own style. I know what I like. I know what I look good in. I'm going to buy it in every color. Yeah. Yeah. Cute. I love it. How old were you, Cori?
I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember this like vividly, and I remember the feeling. For
That's
me,
so cute.
Like I was like, I just remember, you know, like just kind of stepping out and being myself.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I did that, like, you know, with decorating my room as a, you know, when I was in high school. I was 12 years old. And I had just gotten a skateboard, and skateboarding really like evolved to be like my first love, like something I was very passionate about.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about myself doing it. And I looked up to like kind of all of these skateboarders that I just really gravitated towards. And there were a couple of brands that are no longer around anymore, but I remember my mom took me shopping, and she was like, yeah, you can pick, you know, I think it was like 4 t-shirts or something. And I wore those every single day, just like in a rotation, as a 12-year-old would.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was a brand called World Industries, and I had a sweater of theirs too that I wore every single day, and a brand called Shorties. And it was just the first time I remember like going to school feeling like myself, and I looked different than like, you know, my peers, because 12-year-olds were not wearing like baggy skate clothes, you know, in 99. And I felt this like almost shock and awe because I was different than when I left 5th grade, if that makes sense, you know? And I still do that like to this day. Like, you know, I've showed up to work with like blue hair, and people are like, why does Cori have blue hair? And it's just because I love that, like, you know,
shock value.
Yeah.
Totally.
Or like, Cori does he have a Mickey Mouse tattoo? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. I love that, and I've learned that about myself.
You love having your own signature style.
Yeah.
That's uniquely yours.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that journey for me, I don't ever want to stop.
Yeah.
I love kind of taking those things, you know, back then I was like, I'd wear like studded bracelets. Not going to do that now, but it's like, what's the studded bracelet for 36-year-old Cori?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I hope that there's a studded bracelet for the 55-year-old Cori and the 75-year-old Cori.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
And
that's great.
yeah, like another time that I wanted to mention, this is the first time I remember being like, I'm going to do this to my room, and I feel awesome doing it. Do you remember the Can't Stop video by Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah.
They took this guy, hit some artwork from this artist named, I believe his name is Edwin Worm, and a bunch of his different pieces they used as inspiration for each scene in the music video.
Oh, cool.
And the performance part of that music video, which is like where the band's playing, you know, was an orange backdrop, and all of their instruments were like chrome and silver.
Oh, dope.
And that's like,
so cool.
Yeah, and it like pulled from this guy's, it was a photography. And so I painted all the walls in my room orange, which
Yeah, you did.
I like, I don't like orange, although it's my color astrology. And I'm like looking through my life, I was like, this has like brought itself to me a couple of times.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I just need to lean into this.
Yeah.
Lean into the orange, my friend.
And then I painted my nightstand, my bed, and my dresser all like chrome, like with this chrome paint.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I was like,
how old are you?
Cool.
You're 12?
16.
16 when you did that.
Yeah.
That was a big move. That was very involved too.
Yeah. And I'm like thinking back, I'm like, where did I like gain the confidence to do that?
I love it.
Isn't that fun? Like when you are a kid, there is a confidence. I mean, along with a lot of insecurities, no doubt, but there is a confidence, you know, that just like kids will just like go up to somebody and like say, hey, let's be friends, you know, like adults they'll paint their room orange and all their furniture chrome. Yeah. You know, they're just like, well, why not? They have no apprehension because the world hasn't taught them yet.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, to doubt that.
In that same room, there was an album that came out in like November of 2003, so over 20 years ago, by Blink-182 and FYE in the Provo Mall. Do you remember that? Yep. I feel like that was like the good hang spot back then. And I went up to the manager. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was awesome back then. Not so much anymore. But yeah, as like a 15, 16-year-old kid, I like went up to the manager. I'm like, what do you do with because they had these like huge, like 6 foot tall by 4 feet wide signs of like new Blink-182 album. And it's like their picture. I was like, what do you do with those signs? Like he's like, oh, we just throw them away. I was like, can I have that? And he's like, yeah, come back next week. We'll throw them away. You can have them. So I like hung those up. There's like literally floor to ceiling, like artwork. No I'm like, who the hell was I back then? Like I would never do that.
Why
now.
are we dumpster diving now?
I know.
To like get some cool posters.
Total. I'm going to FYE this weekend.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So I'm like looking back on them, I'm like, man. And then I even still do those same. So like that trick that I'm like calling it with like kind of diving down and finding the inspiration behind something that I loved and then stealing from that is something I still do. I just got some artwork framed that you gave me the guy's contact. He took a picture of my wife's grandparents, sketched it. We just got them framed.
Awesome.
We're in love with them. They're amazing. But that's like the same exact thing. I just like drilled deeper and I was like, I'm going to take this and put it, you know, my own like spin on it.
Yeah.
And so it's not just like a blown up picture, but it's like artwork, you know, and
that's so cool.
Yeah, it felt what I think it does for me internally is help me escape imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I'm not like,
it's rooted in something really personal and a personal experience you have.
Yes.
I love that because imposter syndrome is a huge thing that kept coming up for people with this topic of personal style is like not knowing for sure if it's rooted or steeped in who they are, but maybe they see somebody else doing it. I think it's a little bit like, I love where we're going right now. I hope this doesn't derail us, but a little bit like how Chip and Joanna had this massive movement, right? And after that, what did we see? A huge uptick in farmhouses because everybody loved Chip and Joanna. They're this wholesome, all-American couple steeped in, you know, Texas roots, hardworking folks, just people that you want to aspire to be like. And pretty soon they were like, I'm going to try on that entire persona and become like them, and I'm going to build a farmhouse. And what do we have now in all of the neighborhoods surrounding us? White farmhouses everywhere, right?
In suburbia.
It was this huge movement that maybe isn't steeped in something that's authentic to them. Maybe it is. Maybe they grew up in a farm and this is authentic to their life. But that's what we have to decide. And one of the other things that's really important in deciding who we are and what our signature style is to avoid trends. Like you have to really figure out, like, how could a farmhouse be trendy? It's a farmhouse. It's Americana, right? But it is trending. It was trending at a certain point, right? For like the last, I'd say 8 years or so. It's been like something that people are really excited about. And when they're trying to figure out their signature style, they're like, oh yeah, no, but I've been to Waco. I went to the thing
Magnolia.
And I carried the wooden sign out that says whatever on it. And I bought the basket and you know what I mean? Like they experienced it and they loved it. And so trying to find your signature style, but I think it's interesting to avoid trends. I was listening to a gentleman that's a fashion designer today. He went to fashion school. He's an influencer. He's at Fashion Week right now. And he just said, you have to be really careful to avoid the micro trends that you're seeing pop up on TikTok and everything else when you're trying to figure out who your signature style is. Yes, it's fun to take a risk. Yes, Suzanne's had an asymmetrical haircut. She tried it once. She never did it again. We try things. You had blue hair at one point. We try it. Maybe it's us, maybe it's not. But here's what's different. when we buy clothes, we're buying clothes and consuming clothes so much faster at the rate at which we buy stuff for home.
Yeah.
Home is more expensive. It's more permanent. Some people might already have their homes furnished and think, well, I'm not going to refurnish this again, right? So we don't make decisions as quick for our home, which is also why people are so paralyzed about what is my personal style for my home. Because you make these decisions and they're thousands of dollars, right? Where we buy skater t-shirts and they're $50 each. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to play around with style, play around with a trend, big earring, whatever's going on at the time, because it's not going to break our bank the way that working on our house will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's also more disconnecting for people to figure out who they are because they don't make those decisions for home very often. So it's a deeper like experience to try and figure out who you are, which is what we're trying to help do on this podcast today. And that's why I thought it could be really fun to talk about when we knew who we are as a person, right? Because I was listening to another podcast about clothes saying, they said that a uniform teaches who we are, right? Like if I wear a police outfit, I'm a cop. If I wear a fireman outfit, I'm a firefighter. If I wear a jersey, because I play basketball or soccer, whatever, I'm a soccer player or I'm a soccer fan. And they say, this is who I am. The clothes that we're wearing says, this is who I am. Our houses are the same way. They say, this is who I am.
So true.
Right? And that's a really deep work if we want to really go the distance. Or we can do what's trending. We can buy the farmhouse with the black windows, with the black kitchen faucet, and get all of the taupe furniture and call it home.
Which is a shortcut to me. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of shortcuts in life.
Yeah, it's also not hard work to do. What we're describing is a lot more difficult to take the deep dive, figure out who you are, ask people that have known you forever, like, here's where I'm thinking about going. Is this me? You know, and they'll tell you right away, because working on your own home is so paralyzing.
It's a lot harder.
Yeah, we've talked about that. You need like your group of friends, if you're not using a designer, to be like, right, this is me, right? And they'll be like, it is, except for not that part is not you, this part is more you. And they'll be like, thank you for knowing me, you know?
Yeah.
So we're trying to help you design a home and make decisions that are authentic to your life experience, and helping you really cultivate your personal style at home, or tell your story and your spouse's story, you know, and
which is also a whole episode, honestly, of just trying to marry those two and see like what comes out at the end. And it's usually really beautiful, and all people feel represented.
Yeah.
And there is nothing more gratifying than sitting in a space that feels like you.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of listeners might be like, well, I moved into this house. It already had this stuff. It's not offensive. Like, why would I change it? Because it was somebody else, and maybe, you know, and it's not you. And so I just think that this is so needed.
Yeah.
Just for people to like really like give yourselves like some quiet moments and think about these moments. Like, when did you first cultivate style? Who did you look towards? Like, what were the experiences that got you to where you're at now? And like, how do we like put a thread to those on our walls?
Yeah.
You know, so that we can tell our story.
Yep.
So yeah, I love this topic.
I also think it's a keystone for our podcast, because we're not like, hey, your home should look like this project we did.
Yeah.
We're saying the opposite of that. And
Right.
this is like maybe the common thread through each one of our episodes. That's like this.
Be you.
Yeah. This is our advice to
you
get
out.
to be you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and whatever that looks like is up to you. But these are this is the pathway to get there, and the things to think about while you're on the way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's a really fun exercise for us to do in the design center to really figure out who people are. We just barely finished a presentation to my sister Colleen, and we did like 3 rooms in her home, and you could see her come alive when we found the wall color. You know, like I felt like her basement was going to go this earthen jug terracotta color, and it went blue, and I was like so excited for her. And they're a big water sports family. They're all athletes. Her husband's going to love this basement, but it's a basement they're going to work out in. Spacement. It's a basement. They're going to, how about that for a new word? Spacement. It's a space they're going to work out in, as well as lounge and watch TV and movies and stuff like that. But it was fun discovering her color with her in the room, and you could just see her light up, and it told her story better. And then as you put the art we're putting on the walls on the paint color and the other fabrics with it, it was just obvious to everyone in the room. it wasn't like we were guessing. It's an emotional response, you know? And I feel like this work is emotional design that we're doing, and you should feel something when you know it's right, you know?
So
and,
true.
Even
and
finding
have
the
the
right tone, like the ticking, there was like several different navies to peacocks, all these things. And then she's like, well, that one, of course, like she immediately knew which one was her in this like whole gamut of paints. And you're just like, perfect. I'm so glad you know that about yourself, that's the color that that's the shirt you would buy.
Yeah.
And that's the color you'd paint your walls.
Definitely. Yeah. And in some points she wanted to say, you guys choose for me. But then as she talked it through, she knew what the answer was. Yeah. Yeah. It was so satisfying. It's really fun. It's fun to be able to be a person that knows her so well, but then show her what we think she is and then have her take it even further, you know? And I think that's what the journey sort of feels like. Yeah. I know we all have a certain feeling when we're like, this is me. Like that thing clicks, you know, like you're trying on shoes, or I don't know what the experience is. We work on houses a lot. So these decisions are really big, but you know that feeling when you try something on and you're like, it's a yes. I'm taking it right up to the cash wrap and buying this thing as fast as I can.
Your body perfectly.
Yeah.
Without tailoring, you're just like, done.
Yeah.
Like, ring me up. Please.
It's so fun.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
It's so satisfying. I love that little Cori Place was walking the mall and he sees the poster and he's like, that's what that room needs, right? Yeah. Or he sees a music video and thinks, that's what my bedroom should be. That would be the most me thing that there is, right?
Yeah.
So cool.
Just like thinking about that, I was like, wow, that's why I came to the conclusion, this is a lifelong journey for me. It's something that I've, taken steps in, but I'm excited about that. That may be stress inducing for some people, but I'm like stoked to just, I don't know, live my life like that.
Isn't that like, I think that's so fun that I think probably all of us, and we need to talk about your moment too when you found your style. Yeah. But I think there was moments in all of our like adolescence where we took those risks, or just like, let's try it out. I'm going to do a beaded curtain and I'm going to burn incense and hang a hammock in my room. True story. But I took those risks. And
Sue decided I'm a hippie.
I'm a total hippie.
I'm from the 70s. Yeah.
Super weird.
I mean, there's still an element of that.
It's the vintage moment, but it's just like the idea of just like that environment and like movement around me and strobe lights and like all the thing. It's a party. Yeah. And like, but still like you have to start somewhere. Yeah. Is what I'm saying. Yeah. Is like, and you have to just start like seeing what you react to. And like, if it's something that you'll never revisit, or if there's something there that you're just like, I like movement, lights or whatever it is, you can implement those in your life now. It's like little tick marks that like create your style.
Yeah. So I feel like
be willing to start.
Yes.
To be bold.
Don't be afraid to fail.
And don't be afraid to fail, and don't just stick with someone else's style because it's easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that will never be as gratifying. And I don't think
don't
will ever
build
be the
that
backdrop.
farmhouse.
It won't be the backdrop that you want to have for your life, for your children's lives, for people to see your home and say, I feel like I'm in your house. This feels like you. I think there's no greater compliment for us than when somebody walks into a client's house and says, this feels so much like you, Susan, or this feels so much like you, whatever. I'm like, we nailed it. That's all we want, is for it to feel like them. So yeah.
That's really good. I feel like the whole 90s fashion is having this big resurgence, right? And I grew up Cori said he graduated in 99.
That's when I was 12.
Oh, that's when you were 12.
Yeah.
That's when you made that decision about the orange bed. No, you were 16 on the orange
so
bedroom.
I was probably like 2002
you were 12
or
skater.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Well, so I went to high school in the 90s. I graduated in 93, and we were just in the height of all of this fashion that's starting to resurge right now, and we're seeing everything. And I'm like, even though it's the 90s, for me, because I'm an adult now, much like you were saying, I want the Cori Place in the future to have a version of the spiked bracelet, or you want to continue to love those things. You'll see your era come back again. We all do every 20, 30 years, right? It comes back again, but you don't really want the same thing you had back then. At least I don't want it. I have like my version today of 90s fashion that I love. I recognize what's happening all around me. And today I'm like, I can't wear the Doc Marten boot or shoe of any kind. I wore Docs, in high school. And I felt a little bit like, when I look back on myself, it was like my teenage taste. It was like amateur hour of the 90s. And now today my 90s version looks very different. And it's fun to get to see your taste evolve, but still come back to 90s fashion and do things a little bit different. It's never, I don't think it's ever going to be identical, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of like are they called loafers? Like the shoes?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, that's like
Totally.
Doc Martens then, but it's like the more adult version to wear now.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and I think they're rad. And that's, that was my point with like the whole studded bracelet thing. It's like, it's not, you know, just recreate what you had back then, but you kind of take a piece of that.
Yeah.
You elevate it.
Yes.
Yeah, because your taste evolves and changes, and you do it with a better taste level maybe, and maybe you have more budget for it than when you did when you were a teenager. And so you can afford to maybe try something that you couldn't have afforded back then. But also we've seen things come and go. And I remember my first plaid was really big in the 90s. And I remember having this T-shirt that was made by a brand called Guess. Guess was big back then. I think it's still a little bit of a thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Claudia Fisher, wasn't she like the Guess girl?
Yes, totally. Yeah. Anyway, I had a white T-shirt that had the big triangle on it, and the triangle was plaid, and it said Guess Knitwear Goes Mad for Plaid on it. And I wore it with these plaid pants and
awesome.
a plaid triangle. And I remember being like, Mom, you've got to get something plaid. She goes, I can't wear plaid. I wore plaid in high school. And I remember being like, but that doesn't matter. Like, you can wear it again. Then you know how great plaid is, right?
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's here again.
Surely you feel this.
And I remember how strange that was. And now fast forward, here I am. And I'm like, I can't wear Docs. I wore Docs in high school. But like all these cute employees around me are all wearing the Docs and the platform Docs and the Docs as a sandal and all the versions. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do it. But I did buy a lug sole of a Celine loafer that I wanted, and they're still like a really big loafer. Oddly enough, I thought I wanted this shoe so bad, and I kind of looked at all the different loafers that were happening, and there's an influencer that I really like that had the Celine loafer, and I was like, that's going to be the shoe. So Adam got them for me for Christmas. So excited.
That's awesome.
I wore them. I feel like I have imposter syndrome in them. I'm like a grown woman. I'm 48 years old. I feel like I'm wearing the Doc Marten again because it has that lug sole. I've worn them like 5 times, and every time I wear them, I'm just like a little clodhoppery, just a little. I wish I didn't have the lug sole on them, but they're mine, and I'm trying to wear them. Out again and again. But you don't know that about yourself. I didn't buy them at a department store, so they were a gift, so I couldn't like try them on and walk around in the store and just really like kick the tires on it and make sure it was for me. So
sometimes it's hard though, because you've already developed this like signature style of what you wear top to bottom, and that migrates, but you know what you're comfortable wearing on your body. Yeah. Right. And so like to then have like this whole other like world of height and like big broad, then you just feel like a little clunky. Like that's not what you're used to seeing with how you usually put yourself together.
Right.
So it is hard to just kind of incorporate a trend per se, right? It's a trend, and like what is your version of that trend? Yeah. And then like how, and I guess for like the base layer, like if we take this back to home, just like really understanding your signature style. What is the best case for that room? Well, we'll make that room sing, and then you can incorporate things, seasonally, like the loafer, but it might feel weird. Is all I'm saying, and then like, that's not something in your permanent collection probably, but it's fun right now. And you'll figure out how to wear it. Totally. You'll figure out how to wear it, in the moment. I'm sure you look great in them anyway, but for you personally, like, I think that is so interesting though, that just like, we know when we feel right. Yeah. We know when like the slipper fits. Yep. And when it doesn't, you can feel that too. And you're just like, I can look in a room and be like, take that out. Yeah. Like what's not the right bad move, Yep. I think Sue has a really great formula for this that works great for home. She used this on the emergency remodel, and that is that she makes collages of her space. And so what she'll do is she'll take an element of the room that she knows she's locked in on, like she's chosen her tile, she's chosen her faucet, she thinks she knows the wood species for her cabinets, she's trying to figure out her paint color and her hardware and her art and whatever else, right? Yeah. Take it away. Tell them what you do. We'll post this on here too, because it goes back to like doing your own spaces. It's hard even for us, and we're in this like every day, all day. But what I do is like make this collage, and like just says, I put all the things that I know are for
Tell them what you use for your collage.
Okay. I've been using this since COVID, because we all had to get really remote during COVID, and it was an app called Diptyque, Diptic. And like there are glitches. There are better apps out there. Instagram has several that you can use.
Instagram has one called Layout.
Yeah, Layout. Yeah. But basically, and you can choose different formats. So I could do like three rows of 3. That's usually what I do, just so I can be like, hey, here's my inspo. And I'll start to like pull that together at the very beginning, fruition of a space. And I'll be like, okay, that's feeling really good. I like the warmth that's giving. I do want to have gold. I want alabaster, whatever it is. And then like I start to build it from there. And then I can kind of hone in on exacts. Mm-hmm. So I go to the plumbing store. I'm like, okay, I like that suite. I think this is the finish I'll go with, and I put that actual faucet in there with the tile, with the cabinetry finish that I'm thinking. Then I'm like, yep, that looks good. Send that over to the cabinet maker. Okay. And then I'll get my hardware. And it's a really easy way. And I'll always like try and figure out my art too, because that's what's important to me. And I know that that's part of my style. Mm-hmm. Like that's a big like North Star for me. And so I'll figure out, okay, do I have any art that I want to use in here? Or like, what do I want to feel in here? And I think the art for me gives it the personality and it says who I am. So I'll put a picture of the art and then I'll start to put all the other things around it and be like, okay, I got it. Okay, those decisions are made. What's my next decision? Okay, then I'll like keep key players in there and then I'll like put my hardware in and I'll get my, shower curtains or whatever. There's so many little decisions, but by having that, I don't doubt my decision because I've proven it. I've done my math.
Yeah.
And so I think collaging is an awesome way to start, and you can do it on Pinterest, but I think being able to see it all like in one screen and to be able to actually take it to your showroom for your plumbing or your cabinet maker, it's such an awesome tool to just be like, this is the vibe. This is what I'm going after. These are all the other finishes. What can you show me that will get along with this?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm looking for now.
Yeah.
So it'll help you so much as you're developing your style and trying to like implement this room by room to make it more personal.
Yeah, I love it. I heard a podcaster talk about trying to put together their outfits for Fashion Week. And they were like, I pulled all of these outfits. And they're like, I noticed that in 4 out of 8 of the outfits, a girl was wearing a black mini skirt. So she was like, I knew that I was looking for a black mini skirt at that point, because you're looking at things and you're like, oh, the common denominator here is this. And maybe as you're looking at your favorite rooms back to home, you're looking at these concepts that you've loved forever. They're in your favorite file when it comes to, let's say you're working on your bedroom. So you've got a Pinterest folder, master bedrooms in it. And you just kind of keep looking at just different bedrooms. You're like, every bedroom I see has white drapery. I know I'm going to have white drapery. Every bedroom I'm looking at has a 4-poster bed. That's so crazy. Okay, so I'm a 4-poster bed person. You just you start to see common denominators of all the spaces you love, and those become kind of your definites. And then you have the variables that are going to be happening that are going to give it that it factor that's like really you. You know what I mean? You love foundationally, like these are the bones of the space that you continue to love again and again and again. And this is for sure who I am. But then those variables is where you kind of get to have those little fashion bits pop in. And we oftentimes will look to clients and say, what's in your closet? What decisions have you made recently? What are you loving, right?
What do you want to be in your closet right now?
What color do you feel so
awesome.
Beautiful in, right? Yeah. If you're giving an acceptance speech at the Grammys, what color are you wearing? Like for sure. You know what I mean? That you feel beautiful in, that you don't even have to be aware of your outfit because you're just so you in that moment. You're not insecure. And you could give an acceptance speech in it. Like, what's that color for you? You know what I mean? Maybe that's one of those fashion points in the bedroom that we're doing periwinkle or we're doing whatever it is. Or maybe that becomes the color of the room. But I think we have to tap into those kind of decisions that we put on our body too, because that's so personal. And we want the space to be personal.
Yeah. And don't give up the decision to somebody else. Don't let somebody else, or like back to that. When you were talking, it reminded me of, I don't know where the pictures are, and hopefully we never see them again, but when American Express did that shoot.
Yeah.
And she put me, you guys. This is back in the day when it was in Orem, like we had our store and like they were doing like a little commercial advert for the Plum Card.
Yes.
And I'm a Plum Card,
and the Plum Card was for small businesses. Yeah. And when we started our business, we had an American Express Plum Card, and they were like seeing all these charges come through, and they're like, what is this business? And they called us and they're like, we would love to do an American Express ad.
How did I not know this
Alice Lane?
happened?
It was before you started.
Okay, that's crazy.
So like, please bless the don't erect.
So they say, don't worry.
Google this right now.
We've got wardrobe. We're going to take care of hair, makeup, everything. And we're like, oh, okay. So it's me and Sue and Adam that they're dressing. Okay, take it away, Sue. Sorry.
Oh gosh. And I don't know, homegirl that was dressing us. She put me. She Anyway, she put me in this just like, it was like the same color as my skin. I feel like it was so drab, and like, I'm so transparently white and fair and Scandinavian that like, I have to have contrast. I have to have a bold lip, because otherwise it's just a sea of nothing. Right. And she put me in a sea of nothing with like a nude lip and a nude shirt. And I looked back, I was like, that is so disgusting. I look like a raw pig. Like, you know, like it's so gross. Anyway, but just like at the time, you know, and especially like we were younger, and I was just like, oh, we have a fashion squad. This is so much fun. I like immediately looked at those pictures. I was like, what the actual hell? That is so gross. You were at least like in a Persimmon Kate Spady something. And like she did your lip, but I was just like, oh, supporting actress.
No,
like,
but my hair was like all just curled,
like, yeah.
and it was just like springy, anyway, and like I looked like somebody else. I don't know.
Don't
it wasn't
leave it
me.
to somebody else.
Yes.
Even if you think they're the professional, or like, oh, they must know. It's like, nah, like be discerning yourself.
Yeah.
Make sure there's some of you, even if you're having a designer work, like help you curate it, make sure you're giving them some ammo. Because like even in the home, all the homes that we've done, the ones where they come to us with some collections, with some like soul, those are the best. And those are the ones that feel the most authentic because the client did some work. Like we can't do that. And a lot of times if they don't have those collections, we try and like nail the base layer so much that they can build upon that and hopefully add stuff to it. But do some research.
Yeah.
And it's really fun when you do. So
yeah,
anyway,
it's like, I mean, it is.
Don't call it in.
It is, it is legwork. But I feel like that's the journey is the funnest part of any, you know, like like the work of the journey is the funnest part in my opinion. You learn a lot. You kind of discover a little bit about yourself, you know, like, and maybe that's not for everyone. You know, it's kind of like putting in the time and the work. Maybe they don't have the time. They don't want to invest in it.
Yeah. And they don't have to.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
But if you're struggling,
kind of know.
But everybody on this podcast cares about design, or they wouldn't be listening. So this is our tribe of people, and we all care about what our home looks like. Those that don't care, that's okay too. You know, they don't have to. They get to worry about other things.
Like Abper said, you know, find a podcast that is your style.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. I love that. Okay, let's see.
Where to next?
I have a point about as I was thinking about this and kind of remembering, you know, like me picking out those 4 shirts and then me painting my room orange and my girlfriend at the time thinking I was crazy for doing it. I'm looking at those and I found some common threads, and that's what I was alluding to earlier, like my tricks. Like those are the things that I've realized I fall back on when I'm in that situation. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, if I'm feeling like a little bit of an imposter, let me dig deeper and find out, you know, like if someone really wanted to do farmhouse style right now, probably not a great move, but maybe dig deeper and find out where that inspiration came from and then pull out the cool things of that, you know, and don't go balls to the wall with it, but kind of the elements that you do like. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've found that I've done, and I don't even know why I started doing it, probably because
it's really thoughtful. What you said is really thoughtful to like really take the time, because there's some people that don't want to think that hard about it. Because it's a hard thought to really figure out who you are and why you like it and what parts of this do they like and what parts are just like, yeah, those are average. I could do away with those. But what I really like from this is I like the reclaimed floors, or I love the amount of light in the room. You know, it might be a feeling more than the individual attributes of the room. Yes. You know?
Yep. So that's why it's important not to like succumb to a trend or find you know, to do the legwork and develop those little like tricks, the things that you fall back on, you know, whether that's like diving deeper, or me, I like whenever I have a problem, I'm like ruminating on a decision. I don't know if you guys do the same thing. Yeah. Like, you know, maybe it's, you know, if you're choosing, you have 6 of the 9 like squares you want to find, and you're like, no. I do that in my mind like all the time. I'm like, that's not right. And I eventually, it takes a lot of, you know, sometimes it's a lot of thinking, but I'll be like, that makes sense. That's the right answer. I'm going with this, and this is how I'm going to do it. And that feels right to me. Takes a lot of time, like I said, but like that's when I know that I'm doing the right thing and I'm not going to regret it later. You know?
Yeah.
You guys have no idea how many diptychs I did for hardware.
Yeah.
Like I just went the rounds and the rounds and the rounds and the rounds, and like it's okay for it to take time, and like so don't rush into it either.
Yeah.
You know, like
spend the time in it to get it right.
Because I'm so happy with where it landed. They're not even installed yet. They're just sitting on top of my counter.
So
but every time I
pretty.
walk by, I'm like, that's me.
Just like
That's me in a-
baby sculptures. They're so
just
gorgeous.
cute.
Yeah.
And like anyway, so yeah, figure out like your intention, what you want the overall space to feel like, and then spend the time to do the research, or just like find the one thing that's going to make it the difference. You know, even if you did do a farmhouse and you're like, okay, I'm trying to revamp. I was thinking about this when you were talking about, I'm like, where would I start if I had a farmhouse?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying to like dial in what is me. I would start with my rug. Honestly, like if you're trying to add something back and be like, what is me, without replacing the whole room?
Yeah.
Figure out what kind of rug you are. Like it's as easy as like finding those individual components, and that's just one that'll give a lot back. You know, to try and reinvent yourself as you start to build upon it. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. I love it. We have down here as a note, who do you aspire to be? I think that kind of reminds me of the North Star, is that you're putting out this aspirational idea and you're putting all these images right together. It's kind of like the collage idea, but on Pinterest, you're saving, if you're working on that master bedroom, you're saving all of the bedrooms that you're obsessed with, and that you keep looking at those as they continue to sort of tell those individual stories. I think having the North Star has been really grounding for each of our clients.
Yeah.
And that's just creating a collection of images that you feel like
They believe in
and they resonate with. And we go through and we edit the ones that they don't like. And then all we're left with is the images that they're obsessed with. And whenever we're stuck on a question, we're like, go back to the North Star. What did those rooms feel like? You know, key into the hardware. So when we show them, you know, kitchens, we can say, here's those North Star images you loved. Here's hardware that could go in any of these kitchens. Here's a few surprises if you want to take a dare. But this is really the most grounding thing that we could do, because that's what you've come back to every time.
Yeah.
And I think that North Star packet, or that North Star idea for you, whatever you're choosing, having those aspirational images are going to continue to help you make decisions,
And
to get you there. Yeah.
And zoom in on the details.
Yeah.
Like I love that, or I don't. Because overall you can say, I like that space.
Yeah.
But like if you start to zoom in, I bet you'll have opinions on the hardware, or on the lighting, or on the thing. Overall, it's a beautiful picture. Chip and Johanna created a great home.
Yeah.
But if you zoom in on things, you'll be more opinionated. And I hope you are than you think, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. I will say too, you do a really good job just as far as like North Starring. Like if you can like create some type of, even like a tangible like vision board for yourself. Like Pinterest is awesome, but if you have an active project, you print out pictures and you tape them to your wall. Like even behind us, and we're in Jess's office, PS recording, and she has pictures like taped to the wall of like current categories we're trying to develop and things like that, just so that it's a constant reminder to be like, yep, I still like it, or actually, no, I want to shift this.
Yeah.
You know, or like in your office, I know behind the curtains you have like all these other images taped up. And so even in your bedroom, don't be afraid to like tape some ideas to the wall to be like, I still love it. I still love that color. Okay, let's do it. Even if it's a paint sample or whatever it is, you know, just to, I don't know, just remind you who you are every day.
Yeah.
And like make sure it's the right decision. And I think it's super therapeutic. Even like get a pin board. Like we have them in our office, and I just redid mine, and it was so therapeutic to be like, what am I into? What is inspiring me? Like not only for myself, but just like fashion forward, like moments, like maybe for a client if they're down for it. You know, I think it's really, really healthy to have like to stretch yourself and challenge yourself to like put it up, see if it sticks, you know?
Yeah. That's so good.
Or like who is even doing it right now, you know? And like look at those people and try to like, you know, insert yourself. Like a lot of people, a lot of musicians say the best way to find your voice is to imitate someone else.
Fascinating.
And that's like, I mean, that's Nirvana. Nirvana's like, we love the Beatles, but we can't play as good as they can, so we're just going to put everything in distortion and you won't be able to really hear it anyway. And then we don't sing as well, so we're just going to scream it. And then they became Nirvana.
Oh,
you know?
fascinating.
Break down their chords like, oh, wow, that's a very Beatlesy chord progression.
Yeah.
And they like stole those things, like the Beatles are doing it right, obviously, you know, biggest band ever. And then, you know, Nirvana kind of just stole those things and became them.
Celebrated their assets.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's been hugely like my journey. I'm like, oh, so-and-so looks so cool, like doing this. Like, how can I be cool like that? You know,
Yeah.
how can I incorporate that into my life and it can still be me?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
it's literally us failing at the people that are doing it right, but it becomes us, you know, at least that's how it is for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, like and that's a very childlike thing to do too, is like see someone and be like,
And mimic.
yeah, I want to do that. But it's like, that's kind of almost where we lose some of ourselves as we get older. And my wife made me listen to this podcast, not made me, she's like, you should listen to this. And this lady was describing like our ego and a lot of people refer to our ego as like who we are.
Yeah.
And she was saying that it's actually who we've been conditioned to be because of the way like our surroundings. And like it actually ruins kind of like who we actually are, and like kind of steals some of our innocence, and we try to protect our ego. And you know, but if we learn to let that go, we can kind of be more free inside of ourselves, and therefore make easier decisions, and you know, not be so
unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times we're apologizing in fear that it might offend somebody else, or it might not be their style. So therefore, like, oh, I'm so afraid of when so and so comes into our house.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, but just to kind of prove them wrong and just be like, this is me. You know?
Our second point says, do what you want. Don't care what Karen thinks.
Care what Karen thinks.
Yeah. And I do feel like there's a part of you in your life cycle, and it depends on who you are and how confident you are, and your personality and a million other things. But there, I think, is a truth that the older you get in life, probably the less you care about what people think, hopefully, right? I've probably said this example before on here, but I was listening to Gwyneth Paltrow talk on something, and she said, it was so great when I turned 50. I think she said, or maybe it was 40. Yeah. When I turned 40, she goes, I automatically got that software upgrade in my brain, you know, where you don't care about what people think. And you just kind of come into yourself, right? And so this exercise of figuring out who we are becomes easier, I feel like, the older we get, because we've kind of come into ourselves. We've got that brain upgrade, and we automatically don't care what people think. We do what we think is right for us. We care what our spouse thinks. We care what our kids think. We want to tell our collective story in the home, and we can be more pure about that. I think as we get older, hopefully we can be more pure about that. And I think not caring what people think gets us authentically closer to who we are without outside influence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You said something like really interesting that I'm just like, it's so important too, like for our kids, if you do have children, to celebrate their style and not to like throw, you know, a blanket on it and be like, oh, they'll be fine. Wear this instead. Don't wear what you want to instead. Yeah. Just because like they're figuring it out, you know, I think the younger that we can empower them, like in their space, how they present themselves, like what they love, and to not be apologetic about it. Yeah. Like Nolan is a drama cat. He's only 8, but he's known for a long time that he loves the theater. He gets himself dressed. We listen to show tunes on the way into school. Like that is Nolan, like bar none. And like, luckily he's able to communicate that. And I'm grateful because then I can help celebrate it. Yeah. You know, and I think that's all what it's all about. It's about celebrating, you know, this, like how we cultivate our style. Yep. Right. And so, and do that with your friends and the people around you, to be like, ugh, that looks so good on you. Like you look amazing. Yeah. You know, and especially if people are taking risks, like celebrate it. Like don't judge. Yeah. Don't let them be them. Don't care about Karen. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's why, you know, Cori Place was able to have this experience when he's 12, where he knew that this was the first time he got to choose his own style. You were also talking last night about how your mom gave you a catalog. Yeah. And how you were able to circle what you like.
That was back in the day when you'd like get a catalog.
Yeah, but I was going to say that though, like growing up in the 90s, 80s, 90s, we only had catalogs. We only had direct mail. Or we saw things on movies, right? Like I loved Cindy Mancini and Can't Buy Me Love. And I was like, I'm going to be a cheerleader because Cindy Mancini's a cheerleader. I don't even know what I have to do, but I just know that that's going to be the life I'm going to have in high school, right? Like you see people doing something and it resonates with you in a really big way.
Cindy Mancini like doing her like little like cheer thing, like the warm up.
Yeah, totally. No, but I think that I guess what was the point that I was making about needing to be able to let
celebrating it.
our kids make these decisions and figuring out who we are. Oh shoot,
the catalog.
The catalog. Yes. Yeah. So okay, so we're only as good as our resources when we were younger, right? I could only go shopping at Christensen's department store in Richfield, Utah, or the University Mall on my birthday, because my birthday's in August, and every year for my birthday, I would say, I want to go to the University Mall and I want to go school shopping.
Which
for
was
my
not
birthday.
a jaunt, by the way. Like, you just don't like.
It's a 2-hour drive to go to the city in Provo, where Cori got that free poster and where Suzanne Hall worked at the Gap. Isn't that funny? So it's the same mall.
Imagine if we passed each other in the hallway.
Yeah. So I'm living 2 hours south of them, and I'm also like a decade older than they are, and so we're not all crossing paths. But that'd be so cute if we could see like some old video where we all cross paths. But we only know what we know, what we're able to see. So maybe we saw movies, maybe we saw music videos, we see what's in our department store, but that's as big as the world was back then. Today, we all have Instagram, TikTok. The world is so much smaller. We have online shopping. So you have all of these things you can make decisions from, which is way more complicated. But you have way more ways to express yourself and to see more things that you might resonate with. But that can also be like drinking out of the fire hose and really daunting to figure out who you are in this huge world where you're being served ads all the time, and you could buy literally by double clicking on the side of your phone. Like, it's,
I wonder everyone has anxiety.
You don't have
to.
It's
too much. It's like ordering from Aubergine or something like that. No offense. It's too much. Too many decisions. I like in and out, you know?
Yeah, totally. Secret menu. Then you feel like you're in the club or in the know or something like that. But I do feel like as much as we expose ourselves to things or see things, that will either broaden our breadth and depth of ability to be able to choose our style, or it could become more daunting. Hopefully it's the first one, where we get to really dial in who we are, what we know looks good on us. There's also this theory that people get caught in a rut, and they say that you quit changing once you feel like you've peaked. Like, they'll say for our parents, it was when all the kids were still at home. So for my parents, that would be that they're still dressing from the 90s to the 2000s, and that their house stays the same, and that nothing ever changes. Their hair stays the same because they were the happiest in that era, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's also the challenge, is like, how do we continue to move forward and evolve and not peak at a certain time? Yeah. If that's important to us. Maybe that's not important, but I think because we're all listening to this podcast, we care about design and moving things forward, or doing something that's steeped in enough nostalgia and history that it means something to us. Much like the American flag means something to us, and we don't want it to change, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think there's things like that in our personal style, and then there's times where we take risks and do some fun throw pillows, or we wallpaper a ceiling in the pantry because we're feeling something, or you know what I mean? Yeah. So, super interesting. So there's also like, how do we not, get stuck in our style?
When you said that, I thought of a conversation Mario and I had the other night, where she's like, "Oh my gosh, can you, like, our kids are growing up, obviously, as they do." Yeah. And she's like, I'm sick to my stomach about it. I was like, you know what? I knew going into having kids that they were going to grow up. So I kind of just like prepared. I was like, well, I'm just going to enjoy every stage. Yeah. And when that stage is over, I'm okay with that. I'm going to let it be that stage, and I'm going to, enjoy the next one. Yeah.
And it does get better. Mm-hmm. It's different, and you're constantly transitioning, but it can get better if you celebrate it, back to just our personal style, our kids, or anything, like, it can be awesome if you have that mindset. And like, how are you going to change? Mm-hmm. How are you going to evolve into this next phase of Grady? And, and how are you going to help celebrate it and like capture it in this moment, so you remember it, because it's so awesome.
Yep.
I think that's the same thing with, like, if we look back at pictures of our homes, like 10 years from now, we look at it, what is it today, and what is it giving back? And like, what is this backdrop for this moment when our kids are so sweet and young for us, right? Mm-hmm. Or what does it look like now? Like, what does that room look like with like Kate and Jane, like when they were younger, and what does it look like now? Where are they at now? What are they taking from those memories? Yeah. I think there's so much, and I think we see it a little bit. We didn't have as many pictures when we were younger. Yeah. But like, I can look at pictures of me when I was like a kid and be like, I remember that crushed velvet sofa. Yeah. In grandma's house, and like, And they're memory points that add to your style, that either you loved it or you didn't love it.
Yeah.
And those like little, like even like in the midst of like how much information overload we have and how many things there are to look and be inspired by, I do think that there's that dip of nostalgia that everybody has. We had a client, you know, that wanted to like replicate his aunt, who he deemed as the classiest, coolest gal, that always like she had a black and white floor. What else did she have?
She wore fake eyelashes. And he just thought that she was like the most successful version of a human there was, right? Like just so sophisticated. And
she was confident.
One day he wanted to have a checkered floor just like his aunt with the fake eyelashes. Yeah.
So it's steeped in nostalgia.
Yeah.
And so what are like the things that we're like paying attention to now that our kids will like take as part of their style, you know, and hopefully remember like an ounce of like what you taught them or what they saw you doing.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that backdrop is so important, you know, and that's why it's important to like just be individual, you know, the art that you have on your walls, like what is it saying about you? Like,
I feel bad I didn't let my kids design their rooms. You know, when I think about little Suzanne and the beaded curtain and the hammock and the incense.
Judy was so free.
And Cori painting his room orange with chrome furniture. Like I also don't know that my kids care about interiors, but there is something that really defines your sense of self. And I think that your memories are like, I feel like they're deeper and stronger when you get to make those decisions about your own environment as a kid. I remember in the 80s or 90s going to Wallpaper Warehouse with my mom and choosing what my future bedroom was going to. I chose the upper wallpaper, the lower wallpaper, the border, because you'd have like a belt line around the middle and
a chair rail or something.
Yeah. And then my mom would let us graffiti the night before with all of our friends would come over and we'd write all over the old wallpapered walls. And in the morning we'd score them all and spray the solution in it. And then we'd pull it all off and wallpaper the room. And I got to choose like what my room was going to look like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was so fun to be allowed to do that as a teenager or a preteen, you know, just to get to choose who am I? This is who I am. You know, it's like wearing the uniform. It's like, I am
freedom.
Yeah. I'm a soccer player or I'm a dancer or I'm a classy gal with maroon and, you know, whatever else my wallpaper was. I remember the border was a stripe that looked like crown molding. Yeah.
Okay. There we
go.
Yeah. Cheaper than finished
Only
work.
if we could get pictures of that.
I know.
That would be awesome.
I know. We re-wallpapered my room, I swear, like 2 or 3 times growing up. But my mom was really, really good, and she could do anything. She could sew anything. She could wallpaper. She was just like, you know, we all worked at it, and it was super fun. And I love that we had those memories. And I'm like, dang it, I should have let my kids. I feel like we need to let our kids start to figure that out and use their personal style. Like when my daughter was taking guitar lessons, I always had a guitar sort of leaning against a chair in the living room, and that sort of became like a fixture in the room. It's like who we are, and we left that out. We didn't like put it in a case and store it away, you know, like, or I've seen people like hang guitars on walls, or I don't know, you like who you are and what you do becomes part of the home, and it gives back to it, and you just embrace it. You know, like Nolan plays the ukulele and a guitar, and he could have those things hanging on his walls, and like the stories that they'll tell.
Yeah, the other day he came in, we were all just in the living room. He's like, "Hey mom, I did something." I was like, "Oh, what'd you do?" and he's like, "So I had these like really awesome Pokemon stickers, and I put them on my wall. Like, can I leave them up there?" And like my initial thing was just like, "Oh no," like no. And Tom's just like, "Suzanne, wait, just go look at it with him." You know, just like I was so grateful to just be like, let them be them. You know, and so we looked at them like they're huge Pokemon stickers on his blue wall. Yeah. But like, how do I make this cool? Like, put it through my filter. I'm gonna make Pokemon cool, darn it. But anyway, it is so important. You know, just because they'll feel the most themselves, and they'll be willing to like, I don't know.
He'll remember that you let him do it.
Yeah. Totally. And like, and then he'll podcast about it 20 years from now, right? But
I think it's always fun when we get to do kids' bedrooms and we get to interview the kids, and the parents are there, you know, usually, and they're helping interpret for them what these things mean.
Filter a little bit.
Yeah, but those spaces are always so cool, and the kid is just as excited as the parent to see the finished result. Yeah, it's fun. Okay, super fun.
I love it.
I think those are all of our points, guys.
Yeah.
Did we do it?
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for hours.
I know
about cultivating your. I wish
at some point.
I wish everybody could talk back to us, because I think it's such a fun discussion.
That's what we should do. Like we should have them write in, dear Alice at AliceLaneHome.com, and tell us like things that you've done or even just funny stories of like like being 12 and
your
yeah.
style.
Yeah.
Like it would be awesome to have an episode where we like review those.
Yes.
So everyone that's listening should write in. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Please
any tips on cultivating your style that you think are great. I just feel like it's an ongoing discussion and we're constantly doing it and we're constantly evolving into the next version of ourselves. Yeah. I will tell you this, as an outro, when I knew this personal style moment came into me when I was a teenager, I was probably like 14 or 16. I don't know. My parents have these really good friends last name's Thompsons, and the wife was such a fox. She's blonde and she's from Arizona originally, and her husband bought her this car. And I was like, oh my gosh, when I saw Lanita Thompson had this Audi, which there was no Audis in Richfield, Utah. She got this Audi and it had these 4 circles interlocked on the hood ornament. And she got a gold package on a pearl colored Audi. And I was like, someday when I make it, I am going to be like Lanita Thompson and I'm going to drive myself an Audi. And it was just like my North Star. And sure enough, like my first car graduating from college, I got an Audi. And I thought about Lanita and I was like, how do I get that gold package? But by then gold had kind of, come out of fashion. But I was like, I remember. Yeah. But you do sometimes have that style icon that helps you sort of know your North Star, as much like the Beatles were to Nirvana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there is some imitation in there and it's okay. Cause your version, my Audi was like this dark teal green color with like a white interior. It wasn't pearl. It didn't have the gold package, but it was still like the same type of car that I always aspired to have. So even though the cars weren't identical, it inspired the next version, and I think that's okay.
Yeah,
definitely.
It was your version.
Yeah, that's how you become you.
That's why.
Yeah, totally. Anyway,
okay.
Good stuff.
You
guys, if you don't mind leaving us a review, a 5-star review, we would love it. And if you want to send in topics, we would love to hear what you want to hear about on Dear Alice, or interviews, people that you want us to have on the podcast.
Yeah.
And always questions.
Yes.
Always questions.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, send those topics to dearalice@alicelanehome.com. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you guys next time. Hey, thanks for listening. If you like our show, please leave a 5-star rating.